Welcome to the test set. Here we talk with some of the brightest thinkers and tinkerers in statistical analysis, scientific computing, and machine learning, digging into what makes them tick, plus the insights, experiments, and OMG moments that shape the field. This episode is part 2 of a conversation with Wes McKinney, open source software developer, author, metalhead, and principal architect at Posit. I'm Michael Chow. Thanks for joining us. I do feel like that's a theme that comes up too in a lot of your work, and what you talk about is kind of the funding side, like how do we get people into this position? And I feel like a lot of really interesting things you've said have also highlighted the kind of like what gets attention and what doesn't.
Well, the whole funding open source is a really complex question, and I came initially from the finance world, and historically folks from financial firms were not so keen to release open source software, and maybe even less keen to fund work that might benefit their competitors. So I recognize that a big part of being a successful open source developer is building a business case why people should adopt the software and why people should contribute to it. But then the next level beyond that is direct funding, and that often is even more complicated, in part because of kind of boring problems around budgeting and accounting and things like that. Because maybe the person who wants to fund the project, they want to fund the project, but they have to convince the powers that be that to allocate budget to do the work. But I recognize that particularly with Arrow, because Arrow was a project that was much more resource intensive than Pandas, and it also needed to have broad buy-in from a lot of sectors of business, and so I had to essentially embrace this role of being like developer evangelist, or chief marketing officer for the project to convince.
You mean like why should you fund Arrow, and kind of like how to?
Yeah, well, there's the technical persuasion of convincing people that this is you have an approach to solving a problem that is the right one, and that it is also solving a problem that they have, and that they should consider adopting your experimental brand new technology, which not that many other people use. So you're asking people to take a leap of faith, and so you have to identify people who have that maverick type innovator personality, that are willing to take a risk, that they're willing to try something new, and they hope that it succeeds, but they're willing to fail. And so, as an example, like early on in Arrow, like I connected with folks at 2 Sigma, and they were like, we're really excited about this, and so we spent a bunch of time together, and they were willing to put their money where their mouth is, and put significant resources behind me to work on the project. And that I think people have this idea that a lot of open source projects succeed on single passionate developer working nights and weekends, squirreled away in the attic. But the reality is that it does take it takes a lot. It takes corporate resources, it takes a village essentially. And so I couldn't have done most of what I've achieved without the support of people believing in the different visions and experiments that I've run, some of which have succeeded, and some of it not everything has been successful. So
how did I'm so curious how Apache factored in too. Like I know the name Apache, and obviously a lot of the Apache, but I'm curious what was kind of the benefits you saw in the strategy.
Right. The Apache Software Foundation, or the ASF. So it's one of the best known open source foundations. They provide like a home for open source projects. They provide like marketing and some developer infrastructure, legal protections. They manage like trademark and copyright and that sort of thing, code licensing. They were started in the 1990s when the world of open source was very different. So Linux was only a few years old at that time, and everyone was freaked out about getting sued by Oracle or Sun or whoever were the major players in that day, because open source was just really, as a thing, was the free software movement. It was still very new. But as the ASF evolved, it has become essentially a neutral home for open source projects that have corporate contributors that are looking to establish a neutral, like a Switzerland-like neutral ground for governance, so that contributors can develop the project in a way that is open and transparent, and to try to at least as much as possible mitigate some of their conflicts of interest. And so, so when a company is looking to develop a project, but to give up enough control where that maybe even their direct competitors can join as contributors, and you don't want to be looking around and say like, what's your motivation, or like what are you hiding, like what's going on in these backroom discussions. So in the ASF, the rule is that you can't make decisions in private or in backroom discussions. Like if you want to make a decision, you have to have the discussion openly and in public, in a way where everybody can participate. And so this helps level the playing field. But it also helps people who maybe don't work at your company. It gives them visibility into how you're thinking, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and gives them a way to also get involved. And so as a way to build community, I think the ASF has played a pretty important role.
It sounds like Apache really establishes a place for companies, or like you mentioned, competitors to kind of trust open source is an interesting one. Whereas I guess I've often, as an open source developer, thought mostly about, as far as the licensing. It's interesting to hear all the other factors.
So ASF is a combination of a permissive license that's corporate friendly. So the Apache 2.0 license includes, do whatever you like with the software, but also don't sue us, and don't get software patents and then sue us over the software patents. So it has protections for all of those things to make the corporate pointy-haired lawyers happy that their bases are covered with respect to IP. But beyond the licensing, there's just this community over code is the motto of the ASF, this sort of community first mindset of how you communicate, how you make decisions, how you treat each other, having a code of conduct, being respectful, but how you treat each other is also that you treat people with respect in terms of you don't just show up and try to steamroll a pull request or say I'm the authority on this matter and this is the way that I think it should be done. You actually have to argue from first principles why your approach to the problem is the right one. So there's no project dictator, benevolent dictator for life, or there's no explicit hierarchy within a project. If you have commit access to a project, your commit access cannot be taken away. So it's a very egalitarian and I think a pretty successful model that other projects that aren't necessarily in the ASF for whatever reason have strived to emulate that model. But I had almost no exposure to this way of working in open source until circa 2015 when I ended up at Cloudera. And so I think that was interesting because it was a combination of seeing how ASF projects work, but then also exposure to big enterprise software, because I had lots of colleagues at Cloudera who had worked for VMware or for Google or for, I guess, Meta, Microsoft, worked for all these big tech companies. And so I also, having come from the finance world, which, software engineering wise was a little bit more of the Wild West, and coming to more of this highly, enterprise corporate software engineering culture. So it was very eye-opening experience. I think that's definitely, helped me become a better software engineer, or at least thinking about how to build larger software projects and enable them to scale in a way that's more a way to scale that's more healthy.
What kind of stuff are you up to now? I know a little bit about your stuff on the Positron team that I'm curious to hear about. I know you're up to a lot more.
I mean, it was just around the time that I was learning about the ASF, and we decided to start the Arrow project, and that's when I first got involved with Posit. So I'd known Hadley Wickham for several years, and Hadley just happened to be in town the month that we were launching Arrow, and I was really excited about it. I was we're starting this new thing, and the idea is to have portable, interoperable data frames. And so we spent a day together and brainstormed what could we do with this that could be useful for the data science community. And so we decided to create a small file format called Feather. So that was my first concrete collaboration with Hadley, and I think that was pretty
cool.
successful. But it also helped demonstrate the potential of sharing technology between across the language fences. And we're like, how can we build tools that could help maybe tear down the language walls and end some of the language wars?
Yeah.
So that kind of sent me down this path of thinking a lot about how to build tools and systems that empower polyglot teams and polyglot development. So I've spent the better part of a decade working on the Arrow project, which has been all about building composable, modular, interoperable technologies that can be used interchangeably across programming languages, and that can be mixed and matched to build different types of data processing systems. I was catching up with JJ and the JJ Allaire and founder of Posit and the Posit team. And so I was like, what's new at Posit? And we're building a new polyglot data science IDE called Positron. And this was in 2023. So this was all under NDA, like you can't talk about this. And I found the idea of taking everything that Posit, formerly RStudio, had learned about building an amazing data science user experience in a IDE form factor. So code first, code editor, console, variables pane, plots pane, and reimagining that within the context of the modern programming landscape, which is very dominated by VS Code and the VS Code extension ecosystem.
Sure.
And so at that point, Positron had been developed privately for a year and a half or so, and the prospect of getting involved in that, and also getting involved in Posit's Python strategy more broadly, really appealed to me, because Posit had been RStudio and had been focused on the R programming.
Yeah.
Had rebranded to Posit, added Python support to all of its products, started making significant contributions in the Python landscape. Hired you.
Sure. Which I'm glad for.
Starting new projects, and as well as bringing some of the goodness from the R world into the Python world. Shiny, great tables, lots of good stuff. And I never imagined myself working on an IDE, but I found some things in Positron, for example, building a modern data viewer, data explorer component. I imagine myself what do I want if I have data frames in memory, what do I want a data viewer, a data explorer component to do? Yeah. And so we set about to try to build that thing, and it's still early, but it's already a very useful thing that I enjoy using on a nearly daily basis.
And just to set the stage on a data viewer, if I'm understanding, it's basically if I'm analyzing data, and this is like a cat doing data analysis. I'm analyzing my data, and I have a data frame. A really common activity I want to do is just peek at it and interact and kind of see what I've got. Is that right? So a data viewer is a really fast kind of glimpse into your data that you can filter
and so we as we initially brainstormed on it, because RStudio has a data viewer component. So when you have a data frame loaded up in RStudio, you can click on the data frame in the variables pane, and it will pop open this data viewer window. It has some basic filtering capabilities. It has some search capabilities, but we started from that place. We're we'd like to essentially have table stakes, deliver what exists in RStudio, but also sky's the limit. What else can we build? What have we always dreamed of? What have we always dreamed of having? And so, for me, so often I found myself looking at the data while I'm writing code to clean it and manipulate it. And so I wanted to have the thing that I could apply selective filters, or I could sort, or I could search, but that would live update while I'm writing code and modifying the data set. And so I wanted that live update experience. I want something that has really smooth, infinite scroll, both horizontally and vertically. I've often found myself with these massive, 10,000 column or 100,000 column data sets. I'm why can't we have a data explorer that is infinitely scrollable horizontally and vertically?
Sure.
Why not?
So I like that you just
we built that thing. And of course, seeing some of the innovations that have come out of the business intelligence world, having things like spark lines, summary statistics, like being able to have like the statistical visualizations like just immediately available. I think we were really influenced by, I'm a big fan of this tool called Real Data. So it's Mike Driscoll's kind of latest company, powered by DuckDB. But I also wanted like really basic stuff like, when you're in data, if you're in VS Code, and I'm sure you've been in VS Code and you have like a data file, like, shouldn't you be able to just open the data file and look at it? And so I wanted that like instant preview experience. And so like we used DuckDB to build that. Nice. So now you can just click on a Parquet file and it opens and everything works, and it's if it's a really big Parquet file, it may not be instantaneous, but it's really snappy, and so I'm proud of what we build, and it's a nice feeling, to cross over to build something that's at the intersection of like back-end engineering, because there's clearly like a lot of like, you need to have knowledge of the internals of like how Pandas works and how Polars works and our data frames and how DuckDB works to create this thing that you can deliver that snappy kind of thing, something that's easy to use but also is fast. But now having something that I just know is there and I can pick up and use whenever I have data files is really nice.
Yeah, so. That's cool. Yeah, it is funny. I do feel like data viewers, it's like this funny, like in the abstract, it's such a funny concept where you're like, it's a grid, I can scroll it a lot, it's got my data. I feel like it's one of those things where, well, like because I work a lot on tables, like how to display tables. I don't know if you've seen, I feel like tables seem like a really bizarre thing to focus on, but like, I do feel like with these data viewers, it's like, when it hits, it like just really hits. Like, as it turns out, it's like a real kind of load-bearing
Well, I mean, you spend a lot of time. You spend a lot of time looking at data, and and now I think what's interesting is that now we have LLMs, and like LLMs also need to be able to look at able to look at data, and they need to be able to look at a lot of data, and context windows are only so big, so it may not be practical to take the whole data frame and stuff it in a context window. And so clearly, like, I think the focus of Positron and this data explorer is empowering the human to be able to get the information that you need quickly and intuitively, and for it to be fast and like not get in your way. But then also, like, as time goes on, like we have to think about we have to think about the role of of how we expose information about data sets to the LLM, so that they also can, if they're empowering you to ask more questions, that they can get the information they need to give you high quality suggestions. So that's something I've been thinking about, and I'm sure like like any data tool any data analysis environment is going to be asking themselves similar questions.
I'm also so curious with the data, you're talking about the data viewer and stuff, what your day looks like. Like, what's the breakdown of how often are you like hands on keyboard coding versus like, I don't know, like emailing people or like nudging communities? Like what does your day break down into?
Mostly I've been working on Positron lately, and since I work closely with folks who specialize in front-end development, and so sometimes I find myself bottlenecked on, like, I need help from somebody who knows front-end better than I do, or if I try to do the front-end portion, I'll make a mess. And so it's a good ebb and flow, and that like I might have a week where I work mostly on Positron and have 10 pull requests or something, and then a week where maybe I'm at a conference, or like I'm joining customer calls, or like doing presentations. Like actually, I think one of the great things about being back at Posit is having more input from real data science users, like learning from people who are using data science, open source data science in a business setting, because I've been so heads down working on open source projects, and I had my I was full time in a startup, up until a year and a half ago. So didn't have a lot of time to like go interview people working on enterprise data science teams to learn about like what their big problems are. So that's been really interesting. And I spend a portion of my time investing. Like I part-time, I have like a small venture fund, which
nice.
is basically, started out as an extension of the angel investing that I was already doing. But also it helps me be like, help be not only, but help be positive eyes and ears in the broader market and understand like, where technology trends are going, like what new companies, like what they're doing, what can we learn from, what should we do differently, where are there opportunities, things that we should be doing that we're not doing, and so that's been that's been interesting as well. I do not aspire to be a full-time venture investor,
like
and people are asking me that all the time. Like I was just at a conference last week. They're like, Wes, like you're a VC now? I'm like, no. Like I'm at best a super angel. And my hope is, especially, I've really focused on working with companies that are directly involved in areas that I care about, like data infrastructure, developer tools, open source, things relating to open source data science, and now some of the crossover into the AI landscape. And so I'm hoping in picking companies to work with, that they're building stuff or they're engaging with communities that I care about, and that helps enrich the whole, make the whole pie bigger for everyone.
It's fair. I like the not looking to do it full time, and in a way I feel like you're like, I simply like code and organize and do this. It's like maybe the more intense version of
It's essentially it's another lever in the community development sort of toolbox in a sense. If you work with a company, I've been an advisor, like I'm an advisor for LanceDB, for example, which is Chung's new company. So he co-founded LanceDB with Lei from Cloudera. So they're building vector database and a file format for multimodal machine learning AI workloads. And that's like the perfect example of like they're using Arrow, like they're using Data Fusion, like which came out of the Arrow ecosystem, and so. It's like their success is like the success of the Arrow ecosystem, and that benefits the data science world more broadly. So
I'm so curious to ask you, because I know last year we were both in Charleston, and we went to a metal bar, and in fact someone in a review called it a relatively new metal bar that hadn't gotten its patina, its metal bar. Patina. And I remember asking like who listened to metal, and we had one very obviously metal coworker, and I feel like you really surprised us by coming out of the woodwork. I figured this is our chance for you to maybe tell the people about your what do you love, what's hot, what's not in metal for you.
Well, I definitely have like wide-ranging and at times eclectic music tastes, but I do enjoy. I had when I was in college, I had a number of friends who were big metalheads, and they like introduced me to like symphonic and power metal, and so like recently, like the last metal show I saw was Dream Theater. Like they played Nashville. Like it was awesome. I think the second time that I've seen them, and so I wouldn't say like I listen to too much metal these days. Maybe like. When I ran the half marathon in San Francisco several years ago, and like my playlist was like mostly metal, and like I think it really helped.
I could see it really.
But like I think I really enjoy the concerts, especially like the live concerts, just because like I think the crowd energy is amazing, but also just I appreciate like the kind of the technical execution, just like the playing is just like incredible. Like everything, like the singers, like the drummers, like all of the guitar and bass, and so it's just like a really like they put on really technically impressive shows.
And power metal's pretty like epic and fantasy. It's like I guess Dragon Force is the one a lot the
they're like kind of the most like over the top sort of but I do like Dragon Force. I saw them once in concert. It was pretty insane. A band that I really liked was Sabaton. So they do a lot of like they're Swedish. They do a lot of like war themed like music, but it's like it's all like a crowd energy thing. And I didn't even know them. Like I went to see them in San Francisco with a former colleague from Cloudera, and I was there to see Nightwish, which is like a famous symphonic metal band from Finland. It's been around since like the late '90s, and Sabaton was the opener, and I realized like pretty quickly like, oh, everyone's here to see Sabaton. Like they're not here to see the main, not here to see the main show. And like I think we were also blown away by the opener. That like by the time like I mean, Nightwish was still great. Like they're always great, but it was like almost a little bit of a letdown. So anyway. Anyway, so my fellow metalheads.
I love that.
Keep it real, but
and I guess my last question is: are you ever like Positron Data Viewer, Sabaton, Let's Go, or are you a more?
No, I find that like I for coding music, like it needs to be like a little more chill. Like I do like having something on in the background, but like I got to listen to like music without lyrics. I found. Yeah. And but yeah, like I found like movie soundtracks and like soundtracks to video games have been like pretty successful. Yeah. Like coding background music. But that's just. It varies by the day and my mood and whatnot. So
I love it. Well, Wes, thanks so much for chatting. I mean, we're co-hosts. So the Test Set is a production of Posit PBC, an open source and enterprise tooling data science software company. This episode was produced in collaboration with branding and design agency Agi. For more episodes, visit thetestset.co or find us on your favorite podcast platform.